Hello, we have another indie review. This was the final book on TBR number 2 of TBR Changer, and that is Shiloh by Helena Sorensen. I have had this book since 2020 when I used to subscribe to Phoenix Crate. Phoenix Crate, if you don't, I don't even know, do they? I think they still exist. They were a quarterly subscription, and they would give you a couple indie books, which I really did enjoy getting. I have a few of those, and then I lost my job and couldn't afford them anymore. So anyway, it's beside the point. Shiloh. I thought I would be reading a middle grade book because the back synopsis of this talks about Amos and as a 12-year-old and his best friend Simeon. And I thought this would be a little like middle grade adventure romp because of that synopsis. No, it is not a middle grade. It is at the very least a young adult book. It is kind of dark. It has, again, I think a lot of allegories, especially for things like alcoholism and grief and healing as well. It is a full journey of that. So we open this book with Amos, and Amos lives in this world under the shadow. And this is where I had to suspend my disbelief a little bit because this world has never seen the sun. The sun is a myth in this world. The stars are a myth in this world. And I'm like, how is anything growing? How are any plants alive? Why is there a forest? Where is it getting any of its ability to photosynthesize? Where? I don't know. I had to suspend disbelief for that. Once you do that, you can enjoy the rest of the book. But it took me a long time to be like, no way. But Amos is the one of two kids, him and his sister Phoebe. And then he has his parents, Abner and Wynn. And we do get we get a lot of different POVs. It's a multi-POV book. And Amos is kind of a prophesied kid. He is known for having unalived a shadow wolf by himself at the age of like 7. And so everybody knows about Amos, right? And he picks up a best friend named Simeon, who is the son of, not like, I forget what they called her, but it was like kind of a governor-esque type, very woman in power situation. But Simeon spends a lot of time with Amos and his family, and is kind of an adopted brother situation because mom is always busy. And Simeon doesn't know where he is actually from or who his father is. So there's a bit of angst over because there's a culture of Klansmen and coming of age and having kind of an heirloom when you come of age. And Simeon's like, I'm never going to get that because my dad, I don't know who he is. I don't know where I'm from. I don't know what clan I actually belong to. And so there's a little bit, not tension, but envy in that sense. And so the first time when I was starting this book, I thought Simeon would end up a villain. He does not. Simeon ends up being my favorite character in this whole story. And Amos goes through the grief of losing his father in front of him. This happens pretty early on in the book, so I don't feel like it's a whole spoiler, but it does put Amos on the path to darkness. And he meets a man in the forest named Mordecai who tells him to drink of the river, which there's all these legends that are woven in. There's a lot of little backstories that we experience, which I did really appreciate all the legends being sprinkled in, because it is said that there was this woman this daughter who was unalived in this river, and now the river is called her Mary's blood. And he's always been told never to drink that, but in his father's absence, he is convinced to do it. And this is where the allegory for alcoholism and grief comes in, because Amos is so lost. He does it and kind of turns into a whole different person, he ends up going off on his own, abandoning his family. And there are just tales and tales of his wrongdoings throughout the land now. So this once prophesied golden child is now fallen to darkness. And we have Simeon, who is left behind, with Phoebe, who is also left behind. Her mother passes from heartbreak, and Phoebe is left all on her own. And Simeon is kind of there for her. And so we grow into their little romance. But we also have, we have a second POV. I've completely missed. I need to stop myself before I jump ahead. We have the second POV of Isolde. And I know it's spelled Isolde, but apparently in the back of the book it says it's Isolde. Isolde is a woman in the mountains who has not an actual blood sister, but a sister who is very, very beautiful. And in their coming of age, there's all these things with kind of the patriarchy and misogyny going on where you can just literally kidnap a woman as long as you go under the threshold of your house with a certain plant, and not mistletoe, I forget what it is, some plant hanging above the threshold, boom, you're married now. And so there's little respect for women in this world. And Isolde is fiery. She's got red hair and blue eyes, and she's got a lot going for her, and she's going to be an adventurer and things. And so she's kind of discovering ways to rescue her sister Rosalind, who has been taken, and also figure out these missing treasures and all this. There's a lot of lore in this. So we have this character. Hold on to her for later. So back to Simeon. Simeon and Phoebe grow up. Simeon takes his lessons as a blacksmith, and we have Phoebe growing up, feeling very, very alone in her coming of age. And her coming of age, Simeon does propose to her, and things look a little brighter when Amos comes back in the picture. And Amos does some bad stuff, and Phoebe ends up taken by the shadow. And now there is a big journey of rebuilding friendships, rebuilding one's character, trying to redeem oneself of the wrongdoings they've done. And Isolde helps out, or Isolde, I keep saying Isolde. Isolde helps them out because she was hanging out in that village when the things went down. And they decide to go on the journey together to rescue Phoebe and also figure out some of the mysteries going on around the town. And they go on this big journey together, and Isolde kind of fills in the blanks about these mystery objects that they have, fill in the blanks about some of the prophecies around them, and becomes an integral part of this. I will say there is also animal unaliving in this, horses in particular. So if you are attached to that, fair warning. It made me very upsetty spaghetti. And we have this whole arc. So that's where I'm going to stop the summary of this. I will say I enjoyed a lot of it. Some of it I was kind of meh on. I do think we could have had a little bit more in the reunion between Amos and Simeon. I think they needed a lot more bashing of heads and almost yelling, especially Simeon. I wanted Simeon to really, really lay it on thick for what Amos has done. And because that's the type of person I am. But I did really appreciate that whole arc for Amos, going down, really hitting rock bottom and then somewhat redeeming himself by the end. It does leave the whole book, I think, can be easily read as a standalone, but there are 2 more books in the series. And I think they're almost companions because I looked at the synopsis for the second book and I didn't see our characters that we know and love. So I think we are companioning it up. So it can be read as a standalone if you're looking for something like that. But yeah, that's Shiloh. I can't believe I held out into that one for so long. It was still a very interesting time. It was a fun read, just not what I expected at all. So there you go.